I quickly want to show you guys the new addition to our family because he is so cute, you guys. This is Theo. Oh, isn't he adorable? He's got a little turtleneck sweater on like me, so we matched today. But he's just a little puppers, and he's just so precious, oh, but so naughty at the same time, aren't you? Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Shania. So for today, I want to do my January wrap-up where I discuss all of the books that I read this month, and you guys, I read a total of 16 books this month, which is just insane, and it's a really great start to the year, if I say so for myself. Among this list, there are quite a few books that I really enjoyed, and then on the other side, there are quite a few books that I just did not like at all, and I do have a DNF in here, so we are like full spectrum on the scale of what I liked and disliked. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. So as I mentioned, there are quite a few books that I liked and disliked, and I am rating them on a 5-star rating, and I have them posted on Goodreads, so if you guys want to see any further comments from me, you guys should definitely go check me out on there. But for the very first book in this list, I read a really great book to start off the year, and that was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I've already mentioned this book a couple times on my channel. Specifically, I talked about it when I was discussing the books that I wanted to read before the end of 2019, and I talked about how I already was really into this book before I was finishing it. But now that I finished it, I absolutely love this book, and like I said, it was the very first book that I read this year, and I gave it 5 stars. I just adored this book so much, and there were so many parts within it that I was just crying because it was pulling at the heartstrings constantly, and I really fell in love with it even though I was crying all the time. So this book takes place in North Carolina during the 1960s, and we follow our main character Kaya, who is also known as the Marsh Girl and has become an outcast from society. Additionally, the book also follows the investigation of a murder that happened to a young man named Chase within the community. And since Kaya is seen as an outcast and is judged frequently throughout the book, the people of Barkley Cove believe she is the prime suspect in this murder. Like I said, we get to follow Kaya throughout her years into her development as a young woman and all the difficulties that she faced living on her own. But what I really love about this book is Delia Owens' take on loneliness and independence and how the two can coincide with each other. Honestly, this is just such an incredible story, and there's so many plot twists throughout that make it so heartwarming, and you really connect with everything that is being said. And Delia Owens' writing style is something that I feel like is very unique. She has a lot of prose writing in there, and there's a lot of poetry that is sprinkled throughout this book as well. So you guys, if you haven't picked this up yet, you definitely should, because it is such a great read. Alright, so the next 4 books that I read this month are all part of a series, and technically I've only read 3 of these books, but I'm counting the 4th one in here because I know I'm going to get to it at some point. I just have some lingering feelings after the 3rd one, and I'm trying to cope with it right now. But that series is the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Kerri Maniscalco. So this is a series that I've been wanting to get to for quite some time, and I've always eyed it on the shelf, but I never went and purchased it myself. But finally I made the plunge and I bought it when it was on sale at Barnes & Noble, and I have read, like I said, the first 3, and I enjoyed them with the exception of the 3rd one. Instead of holding this whole box set up right now, I'm just gonna hold the very first one, so let me see if I can get it out really quick. Okay, so if you guys haven't heard of this series, it is a YA mystery / thriller that takes place in London during the 19th century, and we have our main character, Audrey Rose, who is very obsessed with death. Specifically, she loves to cut up cadavers and figure out what the cause of death was. And if you guys couldn't tell from the title of the book, we are following the infamous serial killer Jack the Ripper, who wreaked havoc during the 19th century in London, and who actually has never been discovered who the person really is. I know that there's been actually some recent talk in regards to who they believe Jack the Ripper really was, but honestly, it's been 100 years since then, and there's no way that we can actually know who this serial killer is. But anyways, getting into the fictionalized story of Jack the Ripper, we follow Audrey Rose, who teams up with her comrade or partner in arms, Thomas, who is also very obsessed with cadavers, and they are trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper is after all these recent killings of these young women have been occurring. Kerri Maniscalco does a really great job of interweaving true facts that happen behind these murders within her story, and I really liked that. And then at the end of not only this book, but every single book that she has has in the series. She has like a little author's note where she discusses everything that's true and not true and how she may have churned some facts to work with her story. Now, I do quickly want to say in regards to this first book, I was pretty let down by it. I didn't like the story as much as I thought I would. I guessed very early on who Jack the Ripper was, and so that kind of sucks, especially when you're reading a mystery book and you know what happens and then you find out that what your theory was actually true. It just kind of lets it down and it's not as fun anymore. So I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I liked where she was trying to go with the story, but again, since I figured out who it was, it let down for me. And what I was really here for was Thomas. He was such a great character. Not only was he very intelligent, but he also was like the comedic relief and he was the love interest. So he had like everything going for him in this book. And not only this book, but in every single book, Thomas is where it's at. In regards to the other books in the series, my favorite so far has been Hunting Prince Dracula. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I thought the development of the characters was really great. I thought the plot was really good. And it had a really interesting plot twist that I didn't see coming, so I really liked that, and I liked who the murderer was in this. But with that, my least favorite in this series so far, like I said, I haven't finished the last book yet, so I can't judge, but I hated this book. And if you guys have read this series, and I feel like everybody knows that this is probably the worst book in the series, and a lot of people hate this book, but what the hell was the author thinking in this book? It was so bad, and I can't get into spoilers about it, but there's just a lot of interesting plot twists thrown into this that aren't good plot twists. They're like, what is that? It's not good. It's not good, and that's why I haven't finished the very last book in this series, which is, if I can, oh my god, which is Capturing the Devil. This is the last book in the series, but I haven't finished it yet because I'm still having bad feelings about this one, and it's like judging this one and overlapping, and I'm pissed about it, but whatever, it's fine. So I think I gave this book 2 stars. It was so bad. It was so bad. I'm done talking about that series. I can't keep going on with that series. I'm still pissed about the 3rd book, but I'll finish the 4th one, don't you guys worry. For some reason, with every single one of these books, I want to do like a full extensive book review on, but I realize that you guys are probably like, we don't give a shit, just do a separate video if you guys want that. Alright, so the next book that I read this month is one that I just did not like. It's part of a series that is just not good. It's not a good series in my mind, but I kept trying to like push through it for some reason, and then I realized by the 4th book that I don't like this series, and I don't know why I would continue on. And that series is The Fae Chronicles by Amelia Hutchins. Specifically, the book that I read this month was Seducing Destiny, which is the 4th book in the series. Okay, so the reason why I picked up this series initially was because I'm part of this Facebook group that is revolving around the world of Sarah J. Maas. It's just people, you know, talking about the books, whether it's TOG or ACOTAR. But anyways, someone had put up a poll saying, who is your favorite book boyfriend? And for the people that they put on there, they had Rhys, of course, and then they had Rowan from Throne of Glass, and then they had a character named Ryder, and he was from the Fae Chronicles. And I was like, who the hell is Ryder, and why the hell are you putting him in our Sarah J. Maas group chat? Everybody was voting for this Ryder character, even over Rhys, and I was like, what is going on? So I went and checked out the series. I saw that it was about Fae, and it was steamy romance. There was a lot of smut involved, and I was like, alright, your girl's gonna read it. So I picked up the series, and I was like, what the hell is this? Because let me tell you guys, this series has the worst writing I have ever read, I think. I feel like it was written by a very young person, but I feel like even a young person could write better than this. It was so bad, you guys. It was so bad. I read the first one and I was like, maybe the first one's just bad because it's her first book and she doesn't really know how to write yet, but maybe she'll get better later on. And don't get me wrong, the sex scenes in this series are like really, really good. They're real good, but they're also really freaking weird because the Fae in this series aren't like our Fae from, you know, The Cruel Prince or like Sarah J. Maas. They're like completely different Fae. These Fae have to feed off the souls of humans, and the way that they get the most food is during very heightened emotions, and the way to get the most heightened emotion is during sex. So these fae basically have sex with humans and they like eat their soul during it. It was such a weird concept with this series. So I stuck it out with the first one. I read the second one and I really actually didn't mind the second one as much because the sex scenes in it were good shit. So I was like in it. But then we got to the third book and it just felt like the author didn't really know where she was going. She was just throwing shit in there and letting it just boil, and that was that. And then you got to the fourth book and I was like, what the frick is going on? This is just not good. And so I was like skimming the last 50 pages just so I could like get done with it. And there's still like 6 more books or something, like, or there's not 6 more books, but there's like 6 books in this series, and then there's like spin-off series that you have to read in order to incorporate the last 2 books of this series, and it's a lot of bullshit. It's a lot of bullshit, and I'm not going to read it. I am done with this series because there's no way I can have any more brain power for this series. Alright, so the next book that I read this month is one that I really shouldn't even consider as a book because it was so short. It's really just a short story and that's it, but I'm counting it as a book regardless, and that book is His Forbidden Obsession by Jessa Kane. So I picked up this book for a few different reasons. First off, it's part of Kindle Unlimited, can't go wrong there. Second off, Riley Marie was reading it for her Smutathon that she had back in the beginning of February, and so I decided that I would also read it with her for her Smutathon. And then the third reason was because it was Jessa Kane, and I've read some of her books in the past, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna pick up this book because I liked her other books, not a lot, but the smut in it was solid. So I picked up this one, and let me tell you, it was bad. The premise of this book is essentially that there is a revolution happening in the world where the public is going against the church. So to counteract that violence, the military have came in and are the protection now for the church members. So in this story, we are specifically following a group of nuns and their travels from the church to a more safe location, and we have a bunch of military men protecting them. Now, the book opens up with the head nun talking to a man who is essentially our main character, and he is a guy that does not trust women. He has written all women off. He doesn't like them based on his history and his family's history of women, and just all in all, just fucking hates women. And the head nun has this issue where she has a very young woman within her convent who is supposedly like the most beautiful woman ever, and any man that lays eyes on this woman becomes instantly filled with lust, and they have to have her like right away. Like basically they just have to have sex with this girl instantly upon seeing her. But since our main character, this man who I don't even care to remember his name and I'm not going to look it up, since he is a guy that doesn't trust women and it will never ever be swayed by any woman, he is the perfect man for the job, and he knows that this woman will not turn him in any way and he will not fall in love with her. But of course he falls in love with her. I mean, go figure. So then there's something that happens at the very end of this story, and it is the main reason why I ended up giving it 1 star. Like, I could get past all the other stuff because screw it, I was here for the smut anyways, but the thing that happens at the end of this book was just so bad, and it was such bad writing. So I don't want to like spoil it for you guys, but it's like a very taboo topic to write about in a book. It's very hard-hitting, and it's something that is just shouldn't really be played into a short story. But if you guys want a really quick read that has some smut-filled scenes sprinkled throughout and is only 53 pages long, you guys can definitely check out this one. Alright, so moving on, I want to discuss the book that I ended up DNFing. I won't talk too much about this one because I didn't like it, obviously, if I DNF'd it, but that book is Supermarket by Bobby Hall. So Bobby Hall is also known as the rapper Logic, if you guys have heard of him, and he decided to write his own book, and I feel like it probably wasn't the best thing for him. The story was pretty typical. It was a guy that had to go through a recent breakup, and he's trying to write his very first novel, but he's also working in a grocery store to stay afloat, and he's still living with his mom at age like 20-something, but he had all these high hopes when he was in high school that he was going to be making it big. The best word that I could describe his writing was just sporadic. It was all over the place. I'm sorry, Logic, but I think you should just stick with songwriting and rapping because those are your talents, and fictional writing, just isn't it. Alright, so moving along, the next book that I read was Enemies by Tijan? I don't actually know how to pronounce this author's name or pen name, but this book is a very typical new adult book. We have a hate-to-love romance between a very famous football player and a girl who is just really focused on her studies and doesn't want anything to get in the way. The really interesting thing about this book that I really enjoyed personally was the fact that the girl and the guy in the book were originally from South Dakota, even though the book doesn't take place in South Dakota. They're from there, and I liked that the author made up a city for South Dakota and didn't just actually do the real city. She felt that she should just make up a new city and a new community college. I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a cute romance. I got a little lost at the end, kind of bored towards the end, but I thought it was pretty good. But all in all, I enjoyed it. The smut was pretty low-key in this book. So I mean, if you're into that, you just want like a cute romance with the smut being like a little side piece there, then this might be the book for you. Okay, so the next book is one that I really loved. I loved this book for some kind of odd reasons. You guys might think like, girl, why do you like this? This sounds not that great. So that book is Credence by Penelope Douglas, and if you guys have been following my channel for a while, then you guys know that I really enjoy Penelope Douglas and her writing. My favorite book of hers is actually Punk 57, but I think that this book, Credence, is going to boot that one out and take the cake because I loved this so much. So this book is her most recent release. It came out on January 14th, and you know your girl went and got it right away because it's on Kindle Unlimited, and I read it instantly. This is a new adult book that follows a young girl named Tiernan who is actually 2 months shy of her 18th birthday, which is a significant point in the book. At the very beginning of the book, we find out that her parents passed away, and within their wills, they left custody of Tiernan to her father's stepbrother, Jake. Now, Jake lives a few states away in Colorado, and he lives with his 2 sons, Noah and Caleb, who are 20 and 21. And Tiernan is faced with a decision of whether she wants to emancipate herself or go live with Jake and his son. And of course, ultimately she decides that she wants to go live with them in Colorado and have a new start because throughout her life, her parents wanted nothing to do with her. Her dad was a famous director and her mom was a famous actress, and they were very smitten with each other, but they had no room for love in regards to Tiernan, and so she has always been lonely and has never really had very much in regards to human interaction. But the problem with this book is that it's very taboo and it's very morally questionable, but like what Penelope Douglas book isn't? And what I mean by this book being very taboo is because Tiernan ends up having a relationship with each of the men in the house. So yes, she does have a relationship with her step-uncle Jake, who is like late 30s, early 40s, and then also with his sons Noah and Caleb, who are 20 and 21 like I mentioned. All in all, I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was just so well done, and I loved the ending. It was so good. But still, you guys should definitely read it because it is really good, and it is probably the smuttiest book I've ever read. So upon finishing Credence, I just could not get enough of Penelope Douglas and I wanted to read more by her, so I decided to read the very first book that she had ever written, which was Bully. This is another new adult book that focuses on our 2 main characters and how they were best friends up until the age of 14, and then they ended up having a falling out and became enemies. But, of course, it's an enemies to lovers trope, so I really loved it. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. You can definitely tell that this is the very first book that Penelope Douglas put out because her writing is just not as good as it is in Credence. But if you guys do like Penelope Douglas, then this one is definitely worth reading, and it is part of a series, so you guys get to go into different characters, kind of like her Corrupt series, if you guys have ever read that one. I think it's actually like The Devil's and I, or no, that's a song. What is that series? The Devil's of Night or something like that. And if you guys read this one, there is a little bit of a Easter egg that's thrown into Credence that's based off things that happen in this book, but you don't have to read the 2 to understand. But if you guys want that little Easter egg and to understand what's going on, then you guys should definitely read Bully and then read Credence. Alright, we're still going strong here, and we're gonna go into another book. I've read so many books and I just like want to talk about them all, but I'm gonna hurry up. So the next book is one that has been on my radar for a little while, and I definitely wanted to pick it up, so I'm really glad that I did because Amazon had it on sale for a little while for only $1, so you know I had to go get that right away. But that book is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This book is a Breakfast Club retelling with a mysterious twist thrown on there, but it ultimately follows the same 5 characters. We have the criminal, we have the princess, the jock, the outcast, and then the brains. The difference with this one though is that when these 5 students go into detention, only 4 of them come out because the 5th one, the outcast named Simon, is found dead during detention. Really liked it. I thought the mystery was good, though there were some elements that I didn't like. However, it's still definitely worth reading if you guys haven't already. Okay, so moving on, this next book is the inspiration for my new puppy's name, Theo, and that is The Guy on the Right by Kate Stewart. Oh my gosh, you guys, I loved this book so much. It was so good and so heartwarming and such an emotional journey. I loved it with all my heart. Oh my god, it was so good. So this book deals with our 2 main characters, Theo and then Lainey, and they are kind of polar opposites. Theo is more laid back. He's not a guy that would be the first person you would notice in a crowd. He's a wet behind the ears kind of dude and is very nerdy in a sense, but also very intelligent and just has such a precious personality that I adored with all my heart. And then on the other side, Lainey is a very vibrant, beautiful young woman who has a very strong personality and is very charismatic and hilarious. And I just loved the way that these 2 characters paired with one another. It just made for an all-out hilarious story. When I was describing this book to my best friend, I was telling her that it was very reminiscent of like a John Green book. I just felt like it was John Green takes on college. That's what I thought it was, and it was so good. It was just such a good, heartwarming story, and if you guys haven't picked it up, you should. It's so good. If you want a college-age romance, this is the one for you, I promise. And it is a part of a series, and I'm going to be discussing the sequel here shortly that I just read, but for this book, I gave it 5 stars because it was so good, and I just will recommend it forever because it was so good. I loved it so much. Okay, so for the sequel of The Guy on the Right, we are moving on to The Guy on the Left by Kate Stewart. So this book deals with a character that was interwoven with Theo and Lainey's relationship in the first book, and I don't want to talk too much about this book and what happens because it will spoil something that happens in the first book, so I don't want to do that too much for you guys, but just know that it deals with our character Troy in this one that is in the first book as well, and his relationship with a particular woman. It wasn't exactly the same as The Guy on the Right. That one is kind of more like a college age romance. This one is more of a real life romance or like a hard-hitting romance. But all in all, this was a really great story and I did really enjoy it. However, I only gave this one 3 out of 5 stars compared to The Guy on the Right because I just didn't connect to it as much, and while it is a very important story to tell and I think it was an interesting take on that type of situation, I just didn't love it as much as the other one. There wasn't as much humor, there wasn't as much dialogue in this one, and I just kind of felt like it fell short a little bit. There was some misunderstandings happening and I felt like the fighting that happened in it, because you know, like it always leads up to like this big fight and then a like fallout and then they get back together or whatever. I just didn't feel like this fight was very reasonable or realistic, and I didn't like it as much, but all in all, it was a really cute story. So if you guys do read The Guy on the Right, then I definitely think you guys should pick up this one, The Guy on the Left, and also on February 25th, The Guy in the Middle is going to be released, and that one also deals with another character that is mentioned throughout both books. So I'm really excited for that one as well, and I cannot wait to get to that one. Alright, so we're at the very end. The very last book that I have read this month is one that I did not enjoy, and that is Darkfever by Karen Marie Moning. My reason for picking up this book was because I was looking at Crescent City, the book that's coming out by Sarah J. Maas in March, and I was looking at some of the reviews, and Chandler Ainsley here on YouTube had mentioned on the book that it sounded very similar to Darkfever or the Fever series by Karen Marie Moning. So then I clicked on the Fever series on Goodreads and I was looking at the reviews, and all these people that I'm friends with on Goodreads were giving it 5 stars. So I was intrigued and I decided that I wanted to read it and see if I was going to enjoy it myself. So this series came out in 2006, so it's been out for quite some time now, and I can see that there are some similarities with Sarah J. Maas's writing in regards to this book. However, in regards to the execution, Sarah J. Maas does a way better job in my mind. This book deals with a young woman named Mac whose sister ends up getting murdered in Dublin, Ireland. So Mac decides to take the journey to Ireland and see who the murderer was because the police decided to dismiss the case. Upon her arrival in Dublin, she finds out that there is a completely different species out there called the Fae, and that she is a she-seer, which is basically a person who can see past glamour in regards to Fae creatures. This book I honestly should have just DNF'd, but I was trying to push through it because I thought maybe it would get better later on, but it just didn't, and I ended up skimming the last like 150 pages just to get done with it, and nothing happened that I liked. There was no really good romance that could keep me going in it. The plot was just kind of boring, and the girl was just kind of sucked. She sucked. She wasn't a great character, and I wasn't feeling it. My heart wasn't into it, and I've read so many better books that dealt with Fae creatures. Like, hell, I think the freaking Fae Chronicles that I mentioned earlier were better than this one. It was so not my cup of tea, basically, and I gave this one 2 stars because of the premise of it. I should have just given it 1 star, but I thought that it had a great setup and could have been really good, but the execution just fell so flat, and I hated it. Hated it so much. If you guys like this series and you think that I should push on and read the next book in the series, please let me know. But at this point, I have no reason to because I just disliked the first one so much. Alright, you guys, so those are all the books that I read in January. We read some good ones, we read some shitty ones, but I think that February is going to be a better month, and I think that I'm going to read some phenomenal books, and I cannot wait. I just started the Nevernight series, and I'm vlogging that experience, so stay tuned for that video. I'm really excited to see if I like this series a lot, even though I just read a spoiler today, because I'm so stupid. I go online sometimes and I look at the little wiki page for the book, and then I freaking see a spoiler. It happens every single time, and I need to stop doing it. I don't know why I keep doing it, but I just do. I never learn. But anyways, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please let me know down below what books you read this month. I'd be really interested to see if you found any great reads for the month of January as well, and if I need to check them out myself. But other than that, if you guys haven't already, please subscribe and also follow me on my social media. I'll have it linked down below for you. And other than that, I will see you guys next time. Bye!